I swear, every time I come to Walmart, the fucking prices go up. I come shopping every 2 to 3 weeks. Tell me why this shit was literally like 40 something and now it's $5.87, $8 for fucking turkey. You gotta be fucking kidding me. And am I gonna buy it? Yeah, I am.
Imagine a world where the foundations of society that we've taken for granted for decades begin to crumble right before our eyes, where economic stability vanishes almost overnight, and people are forced to confront harsh realities they never prepared for. What happens when the systems that once provided security and opportunity start to fail, leaving millions scrambling for survival in ways that shock the conscience? Today, we're diving deep into one of the most unspoken yet rapidly emerging trends in our collapsing society: the increasing reliance on adult content creation and related industries as a means of economic survival for many women. And by the end of this video, you'll understand not only why this is happening now, but also the profound historical patterns that reveal where this path inevitably leads. If you appreciate hard-hitting, no-nonsense content like this from the angry guy, do me a huge favor and hit that like button right now. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear the truth. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click the notification bell and select all so you get every single video the moment we drop it. No excuses. Stay locked in for more. Also, if you're serious about protecting your hard-earned assets in these uncertain times and want to learn how to navigate the world of cryptocurrency properly, how to buy, sell, trade, and grow your wealth safely, head over to Angry's Crypto Academy. It's the ultimate resource designed to empower you with real knowledge, and the link is right there in the description below. So pause this video if you have to and go check it out now. You'll thank yourself later. And if these angry guy videos are hitting home for you, if they're waking you up or just keeping you entertained with raw truth, show some love by buying me a Red Bull through the link in the description. It's a simple way to keep the energy high and the content coming strong. Let's get into it. There's a reality unfolding across the Western world today that very few people in mainstream conversations are willing to address directly. Yet it's staring us all in the face, growing bigger and more visible with each passing month. This reality centers on a dramatic shift in how many women are choosing, or in many cases, being forced to sustain themselves financially amid rising costs, stagnant opportunities, and a broader economic downturn that shows no signs of reversing anytime soon. At the heart of the shift is the explosive growth and normalization of platforms like OnlyFans, where creators produce adult-oriented content in exchange for subscriptions and tips. What was once considered a fringe or taboo industry has now gone mainstream to an astonishing degree. Think about it for a moment. Models and creators from these platforms are now being invited to speak at universities as guests of honor, sharing their experiences as if this were just another legitimate entrepreneurial path, no different from building a tech startup or becoming a social media influencer on more traditional sites. Recent polls and surveys of young women reveal a startling trend. A significant portion now view participating in adult content creation as a viable, even aspirational career option, something positive and empowering that aligns with modern independence. This isn't happening in a vacuum. It's being normalized deliberately through media, culture, and social narratives that frame it as freedom and agency. But let's pause and ask ourselves the tougher question: why is the surge occurring right now, at this specific moment in history? History provides us with clear, repeating patterns that we ignore at our peril. Prostitution has long been referred to as the oldest profession, and there's a reason for that enduring label. It traces back to the earliest records of human civilization. Throughout time, in periods of stability and prosperity, societies develop layers of structure, laws, and norms that push such activities to the margins. But when nations face severe crises, economic collapses, wars, hyperinflation, or widespread scarcity, those margins quickly become the center as survival instincts take over. Women, in particular, have historically turned to leveraging personal relationships or physical intimacy as a direct means of accessing resources, provision, and even protection when traditional avenues close off. We saw this play out dramatically in Venezuela not so many years ago. Once hailed as one of the more progressive countries in the region, with strong social programs and a booming oil economy, Venezuela's collapse was swift and devastating when political mismanagement and external pressures triggered hyperinflation and shortages. Professional women, teachers, engineers, dentists, lawyers, even medical doctors found their salaries worthless overnight, unable to buy basic necessities. Many crossed borders or entered underground economies, grateful for any opportunity to earn enough to feed themselves and their families. Stories emerged of former middle class women crowding into establishments where they could exchange services for small amounts of cash or goods, simply to survive. Children went hungry otherwise, and pets became food sources in desperate households. Access to everyday items like hygiene products vanished, forcing improvisations that harken back to far less advanced eras. A similar story unfolded during Greece's debt crisis in the 2010s. As banks closed, capital controls limited withdrawals, and unemployment skyrocketed, reports surfaced of young people, teenagers included, engaging in transactional encounters for shockingly low amounts, sometimes equivalent to the cost of a simple meal like a sandwich. Hunger and desperation stripped away choices, and what was once unthinkable became a grim necessity for far too many. These aren't isolated anomalies, they are predictable responses to systemic failure etched into the historical record across cultures and continents. Now, look around at the warning signs in our own societies today. National debt levels have reached points that economists widely agree are unsustainable, with interest payments alone consuming larger portions of budgets than ever before. Inflation continues to erode purchasing power, making everyday expenses feel like luxuries for growing numbers of people. Housing costs have soared beyond reach for many. Wages haven't kept pace in real terms for decades, and job security feels like a relic of the past. Add to that the rapid implementation of digital identification systems, online safety regulations, and restrictions on free expression and commerce. These aren't just abstract policies, they're tools that can limit access to information, banking, and independent livelihoods. Meanwhile, a profound social shift has been underway for years. Men, after decades of facing skewed incentives in dating, marriage, and family structures where risks often outweighed rewards, have increasingly chosen to opt out. They found greater peace in focusing on personal growth, hobbies, friendships with other men, and building lives free from the pressures and potential pitfalls of traditional relationships. Approaching women in public has become fraught with misinterpretation or rejection, amplified by cultural messages that painted such initiatives as unwelcome. As a result, participation rates in dating have plummeted, marriage numbers continue to decline, and many men report higher levels of contentment in solitude than in chasing dynamics that no longer serve them. This exodus has left a vacuum, and women who were long told they held inherent advantages, that men would always pursue, provide, and prioritize them, are now voicing frustration online, pleading for men to re engage, to start approaching again, to restore the old patterns. But the response has been silence from many quarters because trust has been eroded over time. Men have built alternative networks, barter systems, skill sharing communities, off grid economies where they exchange value directly without relying on centralized systems that could be restricted. These parallel structures are growing in importance as trust in institutions wanes. And notably, they're often male dominated spaces where entry requires mutual respect and contribution, effectively excluding those who haven't built bridges there. For women without strong ties to these networks, through family, partners, or direct involvement, the doors are closed, creating a new layer of vulnerability as mainstream options contract. The pedestal of privilege that characterized much of the past half century, where women were portrayed as superior in education, morality, and capability across media and policy, is cracking under the weight of reality. Hard times don't care about narratives, they expose what works and what doesn't. And historically, when provision from broader society dries up, survival strategies revert to the most primal and direct. Platforms like OnlyFans represent the modern digital version of this pattern, accessible from home, marketed as empowering, and exploding in popularity precisely as economic pressures mount. Celebrities from various ages and backgrounds have joined, from young influencers to established figures like actresses seeking supplemental income. But beneath the glamour and success stories of the top earners lies a stark statistic. The average creator on these platforms earns around $180 per month before fees, netting even less after the site's cut and taxes. That's not financial independence. That's scraping by in a highly competitive space where attention is the currency. Supply and demand economics are merciless here. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. With millions flooding into the market, chasing a limited pool of paying subscribers, many of whom are reevaluating their spending amid their own financial strains. The value per creator plummets. It becomes a race to the bottom where boundaries are pushed further for diminishing returns, all driven by desperation rather than choice. Women who once dismissed traditional roles or competed fiercely against men in professional arenas now find themselves in oversaturated fields with no safety net. The tragedy deepens when we consider the psychological barriers. Pride and long held beliefs make it difficult for many to acknowledge the shift, to adapt by rebuilding bridges or learning what truly attracts and retains committed partnerships. Instead of understanding men's desires for peace, loyalty, support, and genuine connection, focus remained on lengthy checklists of expectations. Raised to prioritize career ambition and self reliance above family or relational skills, many now face a world where those priorities no longer guarantee security. As Kevin Samuels often pointed out in his direct style, seasons change and preparation matters. The comfortable era is giving way to something far more challenging, and the patterns of history are repeating with modern twists. We're witnessing the early stages of a massive recalibration where illusions shatter and survival demands humility, adaptability, and realism. But this isn't just about one group, it's a wake up call for everyone. Societies thrive when balance exists, when incentives align for cooperation rather than division. When one side walks away, the other feels the absence acutely, and rebuilding requires effort from all involved. Yet the clock is ticking as economic indicators worsen and restrictions tighten. Consider the broader implications. Rising homelessness rates, particularly among those who embraced narratives of total independence, highlight the risks of going it alone without community or backup plans. Cost of living crises push more people into vehicles or temporary shelters, eroding the middle class further. And in this environment, digital platforms offer a quick but ultimately unstable lifeline, one that exposes creators to exploitation, burnout, and long term consequences. Stories from collapsed economies serve as previews. Women losing professions overnight, dignity traded for basics, families fractured under pressure. We're not there yet in the West, but the trajectory is clear if current trends continue unchecked. Debt bubbles, currency devaluation, regulatory overreach all point toward increased scarcity. Men building parallel systems aren't doing so out of spite. They're responding to decades of disincentives, protecting their peace and resources in uncertain times. These networks, trading tools, skills, food, knowledge will become lifelines when formal economies falter. Exclusion isn't intentional malice, it's the natural outcome of severed connections. Women facing this new landscape must confront uncomfortable truths. Competition for quality partners is real. Approaching and initiating matters, understanding masculine needs builds attraction, and no one is entitled to provision without reciprocity. The era of assuming endless options is over. Yet many remain in denial, clinging to feelings over facts, convinced the world owes them regardless of contribution. This mindset delays adaptation, prolonging hardship. Reality doesn't negotiate, it demands alignment. And as we watch OnlyFans creators struggle en masse, top earners flaunting luxury while the vast majority earn poverty wages, the illusion crumbles. Begging videos, emotional pleas, admissions of regret flood social media, but the underlying causes go unaddressed. This is the winter arriving, not metaphorically, but in tangible declines in living standards, opportunities, and social cohesion. Preparation now, skill building, network forming, mindset shifting determines who navigates it successfully. Let's keep building on this conversation because the patterns we're seeing aren't just fleeting trends. They're deeply rooted in how societies function under pressure, and understanding them fully requires us to look at real world examples playing out right now across different platforms and cultures. One of the most telling signs of this shift is how creators on adult content sites are increasingly sharing their own stories of financial struggle, despite the initial allures of quick money and independence. We've all seen the highlight reels, the luxury cars, the designer outfits, the claims of six-figure earnings that draw in thousands of new signups every month. But behind those curated images lies a different story, one where the majority are earning far less than a standard entry level job, often putting in long hours of content creation, marketing, and fan interaction for returns that barely cover basics after platform fees and expenses. Take a step back and consider the sheer volume of people entering this space. Millions of accounts have been created globally, with numbers spiking dramatically during and after economic disruptions like the pandemic, when traditional jobs vanished for many. Women from all walks of life, college students needing to pay tuition, single mothers covering childcare, professionals hit by layoffs, saw it as a flexible side hustle or full time pivot. Marketing framed it as ultimate empowerment. Be your own boss, set your own boundaries, monetize your own image. And for a tiny percentage at the very top, that narrative holds some truth. But for the vast majority, the reality is a grinding competition where visibility algorithms favor consistency and escalation, demanding more time, more revealing content, and more emotional labor to stand out in an ocean of similar profiles. This leads to a predictable outcome: oversaturation. When supply explodes, but the pool of consistent paying customers remains limited or even shrinks as men reassess their spending priorities, the economics turn brutal. Subscribers have endless options, so loyalty becomes rare unless creators offer something increasingly unique or extreme. Prices drop, promotions become constant, and what started as premium content devolves into discounted bundles just to maintain any income flow. Reports and creator testimonials highlight how many end up netting amounts that equate to below minimum wage hourly rates when you factor in the unseen work. Editing photos and videos, responding to messages around the clock, dealing with platform policies, and managing the mental toll of constant self promotion. And here's where the storytelling gets even more poignant. Many creators openly discuss the burnout, the regret, the realization that this path doesn't lead to long term stability. Some share how they left stable careers or education pursuits, believing the hype of easy wealth, only to find themselves years later with depleted savings, gaps in resumes, and content that's permanently online, affecting future opportunities. Others talk about the isolation, the way it impacts personal relationships or self image over time. These aren't rare confessions. They're becoming common threads in online communities where creators support each other through the downsides that aren't advertised. Now, layer this with the broader economic picture in late 2025. Inflation hasn't fully retreated, housing markets remain strained in many regions, and job markets fluctuate with automation and global shifts. Young people, especially, face barriers to home ownership, family formation, and financial milestones that previous generations took for granted. In this environment, quick fix solutions gain appeal, but they often mask deeper vulnerabilities. Adult content creation fits that mold perfectly. Low barrier to entry, no need for formal qualifications, potential for immediate payouts. Yet the long game reveals its risks as demand isn't infinite and consumer behavior evolves. Men's changing priorities play a central role here too. After years of navigating complex social dynamics, many have redirected their resources, time, money, energy toward personal development, health, investments, and male friendships, travel, gym memberships, skill building courses, crypto, or stock portfolios. These become the focus instead of subscription services that feel transactional or unsustainable. This isn't about judgment, it's about choices in a world where disposable income is tighter and peace of mind is priceless. And what's when men collectively step back from certain spending habits, the impact ripples through industries built on that engagement. Historical parallels keep coming up because they illuminate the cycle so clearly. In Venezuela's prolonged crisis, professional women who once had respected careers found those paths blocked by economic collapse. Hyperinflation rendered salaries meaningless. Shortages hit essentials, and many crossed into neighboring countries seeking any viable work. Documentaries and reports from border towns painted heartbreaking pictures of desperation where survival overrode everything else. Families separated, dignity tested daily, all because the societal safety net evaporated. Greece's austerity era told a similar tale. Youth unemployment soaring, public services cut, leading to underground economies flourishing out of necessity. These stories aren't ancient history, they're recent reminders of how quickly stability can erode. Fast forward to today, and we're seeing early echoes in Western nations. Rising reports of vehicle living, skipped meals, delayed medical care, all indicators of strain on the middle and working classes. When traditional employment doesn't provide security, alternative paths surge. But not all alternatives are equal in sustainability. Some build real assets and networks, others offer temporary relief at high personal cost. The normalization aspect is particularly fascinating and concerning. Universities hosting talks by top creators, media outlets profiling them as entrepreneurs, polls showing young women ranking it alongside influencer careers. These shift cultural perceptions rapidly. What was once stigmatized becomes aspirational, lowering hesitation for entry. Yet this normalization coincides precisely with economic headwinds, suggesting it's not pure coincidence. In times of abundance, societies tend toward conservatism in survival strategies. In scarcity, pragmatism reigns. Rhetorically, ask yourself if this were truly a path to widespread prosperity, wouldn't we see more long term success stories dominating the narrative? Instead, the spotlight often falls on struggles, the begging for subscriptions, the emotional videos admitting hardship, the pivots to other ventures when earnings dry up. This race to the bottom isn't hypothetical. It's documented in creator earnings data, platform statistics, and personal accounts shared publicly. Moreover, the psychological dimension can't be overlooked. Many women enter with confidence, bolstered by messages of inherent value and endless demand. But reality introduces competition, rejection, and the need for constant adaptation. Skills like marketing, consistency, audience building become essential, yet not everyone possesses or develops them equally. Ego clashes with evidence, leading to prolonged stays in unprofitable situations rather than timely exits. Men, having observed these dynamics, often choose distance, not out of lack of empathy, but self preservation. The risks of entanglement in unstable situations outweigh potential benefits for many. Parallel economies flourish. Men trading tools, vehicles, land access, mechanical skills, farming knowledge. These barter networks bypass inflating currencies and regulatory hurdles, building resilience outside mainstream systems. Women without direct access rely on intermediaries or rebuild connections, highlighting how division creates vulnerabilities. In Korea, for instance, similar trends emerge, men opting out of pursuit due to legal and social risks, leading to demographic shifts and government concern. Low birth rates, delayed marriages, increased solitude, all interconnected with perceived imbalances. When pursuit becomes penalized or unrewarding, participation drops. Applying this globally, the message crystallizes: incentives matter profoundly. Societies that reward cooperation thrive, those that foster antagonism fracture. As winter metaphors suggest, preparation separates outcomes. Building skills, networks, assets now, while options exist, positions individuals better for whatever comes. Delve deeper into creator stories and patterns repeat. Initial excitement, peak earnings if lucky, plateau, or decline as novelty fades, competition intensifies. Some diversify into coaching or merchandise, but most face the wall of saturation. Taxes eat into slim margins, platform changes, disrupt algorithms, fan fatigue sets in. This isn't condemnation, it's observation of systemic forces. Desperation drives decisions, and in collapsing confidence economies, quick monetization tempts strongly. But sustainability requires demand stability, which current trends undermine. Consider the opportunity cost. Time spent creating content could build resumes, certifications, businesses with lasting value. Yet immediacy wins when bills loom. Breaking the cycle demands foresight, community, humility. As 2025 closes, indicators flash warnings, debt ceilings debated, currency debates heating, regulatory expansions proposed. Freedom in commerce, speech, movement faces pressures. In response, decentralization grows. Crypto adoption, off grid living, skill shares. Men leading this exodus aren't rebelling blindly. They're adapting to realities shaped over decades. Re engagement requires mutual respect, aligned incentives, genuine reciprocity. Let's circle back to the heart of this shift because the numbers tell a story that's impossible to ignore, especially as we sit here in late 2025 with economic pressures mounting on all sides. Recent data from multiple sources tracking OnlyFans earnings consistently show that the average creator brings in around $150 to $180 per month before platform fees, which then drop the take home to even less after taxes and expenses. We're talking about figures that often fall below what many consider a living wage for part time work, let alone the full time effort that top performers claim goes into building and maintaining an audience. This isn't about shaming anyone's choices, it's about recognizing the stark reality behind the glamorous headlines of multi-million dollar earners who represent less than 1% of the platform's millions of creators. The power law distribution here is ruthless. The top 1% capture about a third of all revenue, while the top 10% hoard nearly three quarters. That leaves the overwhelming majority, the everyday creators who poured time, energy, and vulnerability into this, scraping by with amounts that might cover a utility bill or two, but rarely build real financial security. And remember, this is in an environment where over 4 million creators are now competing globally, with subscriber growth slowing as household budgets tighten. Men facing their own economic strains are reallocating spending toward essentials, investments, or experiences that align better with long term goals, further contracting the demand side. It's basic supply and demand playing out in real time, driving per creator value down and forcing many into constant promotions, deeper content escalation, or outright burnout just to stay afloat. Now, weave in the personal stories emerging from creators themselves, and the picture sharpens even more. Countless accounts shared across forums, interviews, and social media in 2025 highlight a growing wave of reflection and, in many cases, regret. Women who entered during peak hype periods, often citing empowerment, quick cash during lockdowns, or supplemental income amid job losses, now speak openly about the emotional toll, the irreversible online footprint, and the realization that short term gains didn't translate to lasting stability. Some describe feeling objectified in ways they hadn't anticipated, dealing with harassment that spilled into real life, or watching relationships strain under the weight of constant content demands. Others point to gaps in resumes, challenges re entering traditional job markets, or the psychological drain of performing intimacy for an anonymous audience day after day. These aren't isolated tales. They're patterns echoed in surveys and creator communities where exit stories often involve pivoting back to education, conventional careers, or diversified side hustles with more predictable outcomes. The initial rush of validation or earnings fades, replaced by questions about opportunity costs, time that could have built transferable skills, networks, or assets versus content that's perpetually online, shaping perceptions forever. High profile cases amplify this, with former top earners cautioning newcomers about mental health impacts or the platform's demands clashing with personal boundaries over time. Contrast this with the broader economic backdrop in December 2025, where indicators signal ongoing challenges. Inflation remains elevated compared to pre pandemic norms, eroding purchasing power even as headline rates cool slightly. National debt discussions dominate headlines, with interest payments claiming larger budget shares and limiting fiscal flexibility. Leading economic indexes point to slowing activity into early 2026, with manufacturing contraction, hesitant consumer spending, and policy uncertainties adding friction. Small businesses cite inflation as a primary hurdle, while sectors sensitive to rates, like housing and construction, feel prolonged squeezes. This isn't collapse level chaos yet, but it's the kind of persistent grind that pushes people toward immediate income sources, even risky ones. History whispers the same warnings we've discussed. During the Great Recession, reports documented price drops in adult services as clients tightened belts, mirroring today's subscriber fatigue. Venezuela's hyperinflation drove professionals into survival modes they never imagined, with barter and informal trades becoming lifelines. Greece's austerity era saw desperation transactions for basics, underscoring how scarcity overrides norms. Recent echoes appear in cost of living crises elsewhere, where women report entering or returning to adult work amid rising expenses and stagnant wages. These aren't judgments, they're human responses to systemic failures, repeating because the underlying dynamics of scarcity and survival endure. On the flip side, men's collective reassessment of participation in traditional dating and provision roles continues to reshape the landscape. Data from 2025 surveys show significant portions of younger men, often over 60% under 30, reporting single status, with many prioritizing self improvement, financial independence, and low drama lifestyles over pursuit. This isn't universal, but the trend holds across studies. Delayed marriage, lower dating app engagement, higher contentment in solitude, or male focused communities. Reasons cited include perceived imbalances in incentives, emotional risks, and a focus on building security first amid economic uncertainty. The result? A scarcity of actively pursuing men, flipping old dynamics and leaving women navigating competition they weren't culturally prepared for. This scarcity amplifies the commodity aspect. Quality partners become sought after, requiring genuine effort, understanding, and reciprocity to attract and retain. Yet cultural messaging long emphasized entitlement over earning commitment, leaving gaps in skills like emotional support, encouragement, or shared vision building. As parallel systems grow, men exchanging skills in mechanics, farming, trades, or digital assets through trusted networks. These become essential for resilience. Barter groups, local trade circles, off grid collaborations, they're expanding quietly, bypassing inflating costs and regulatory hurdles. Access often hinges on contribution and reputation, naturally favoring established bonds. Women without those ties face heightened isolation in downturns, reliant on mainstream channels contracting under debt loads and restrictions. Digital IDs, content moderation expansions, commerce limits. These aren't conspiracies. They're policy trends centralizing control, pushing alternatives underground or into tight knit groups. Preparation now, learning practical trades, fostering real communities, aligning incentives determines navigation ease later. Rhetorically, consider the long view. Societies rebalance eventually, but the path involves pain for those clinging to outdated privileges. The pedestal era, built on post war abundance and narrative shifts, crumbles when abundance fades. Humility, adaptability, mutual value exchange. These rebuild foundations. Some women recognize this early, approaching directly, offering support, competing on substance. Success stories emerge there, quiet reconnections based on respect. Others resist, framing opt outs as defects rather than rational responses. Outcomes diverge, adaptation thrives, denial prolongs hardship. Feelings dominate facts for many, delaying reckoning, but reality persists patiently. As 2025 wraps with GDP forecasts modest, inflation stubborn, and social fractures evident, the preview intensifies. Creator earnings data underscores illusions. Vast majorities below subsistence after effort, while outliers fuel myths. Regret narratives grow, not from moralizing, but lived experience exposing costs. Men's networks strengthen, skill shares, asset protection, peace prioritization. Invitation stands for earned entry, not entitlement. This era tests everyone. Incentives realign toward cooperation, contribution, realism. Let's press deeper into the gay personal accounts that bring this entire phenomenon into sharper focus. Because while statistics paint a broad picture, it's the individual stories circulating widely in 2025 that reveal the human cost behind the screens. Creators who once entered the space with high hopes, often during periods of financial strain or influenced by success stories, are increasingly sharing candid reflections about the toll it takes over time. Many describe an initial phase of excitement where the platform feels like a straightforward way to gain control over income and schedule, especially when traditional jobs feel unstable or inaccessible. But as months turn into years, patterns emerge. Constant pressure to produce more content, escalating expectations from subscribers, and the emotional weight of performing vulnerability for paying strangers. These accounts aren't rare. They're shared in interviews, podcasts, forums, and social media threads, highlighting burnout, privacy concerns, and challenges in transitioning back to other careers due to the permanent digital trail. One common thread in these stories is the realization that the promised empowerment doesn't always materialize for the majority. Creators talk about the grind of daily posting, personalized messaging, and self promotion across multiple platforms just to maintain visibility, often for returns that don't justify the effort. Some express regret over lost time that could have gone toward building resumes, certifications, or businesses with more enduring value. Others mention strained relationships, self image struggles, or the difficulty of setting boundaries in an environment where escalation drives revenue. These reflections underscore a growing awareness that while the platform offers flexibility, it also demands a level of exposure and consistency that's unsustainable long term for many. As we sit here in mid December 2025, the economic context amplifies these pressures. Recent Federal Reserve projections indicate real GDP growth around 2% for the coming year, with inflation expected to hover near 2.75% annually. Unemployment sits in the mid 4% range, with gradual softening in job gains signaling a cooling labor market. Interest payments on national debt continue to claim significant budget portions, limiting stimulus options, while consumer spending shows restraint amid persistent cost of living concerns. Housing remains strained, wages grow modestly in real terms, and policy uncertainties add to the cautious outlook. This isn't dramatic collapse, but a prolonged squeeze that pushes more people toward immediate accessible income sources, even those with hidden downsides. Men's evolving approach to dating and relationships intersects powerfully here. Surveys from 2025 reveal striking figures. Around 63% of men under 30 report being single, not in committed relationships or cohabiting. Broader trends show delayed marriage, with median ages now over 30 for men and 28 for women, and significant portions of younger adults prioritizing personal stability before partnership. Many cite economic factors, building security amid uncertainty, as well as a desire for low conflict lives focused on health, hobbies, and male bonds. Participation in dating apps has dipped, approaches in social settings declined, and contentment and independence risen. This isn't uniform across all men, but the directional shift creates scarcity in the traditional pursuit dynamic, forcing recalibrations in how connections form. Women, long accustomed to being pursued, now voice frustrations over this change, with online discussions filled with calls for men to re engage. Yet responses often highlight eroded incentives, perceived risks in family courts, financial expectations without reciprocity, and cultural messages that discouraged initiative. The result is a standoff where neither side fully adapts quickly, prolonging disconnection. Parallel economies gain traction. Men trading practical skills like repairs, construction, gardening, or asset management in trusted circles. These networks provide buffers against inflation and restrictions, valuing direct contribution over centralized reliance. Entry builds on reputation and mutual benefit, naturally strengthening existing ties. For those outside these circles, vulnerabilities grow as mainstream paths narrow. Digital regulations expand, commerce faces hurdles, and traditional safety nets strain under debt loads. Preparation, learning trades, safeguarding assets, fostering real communities becomes critical. Crypto tools, barter systems, skill development, these empower independence while opening doors to resilient groups. Rhetorically, consider the arc. Abundance bred certain expectations, scarcity exposes them. Pedestals built on prosperity wobble when provision requires effort from all sides. Historical crises, Venezuela's professionals humbled, Greece's youth desperate, preview outcomes when systems falter. Today's digital variants follow suit, with oversaturated markets yielding diminishing returns. Average creator earnings hold steady around $150 to $180 monthly in 2025 data, skewed heavily by outliers, while most cover little more than incidentals after fees and taxes. Regret narratives gain volume, creators advising caution to newcomers, emphasizing permanence in unseen labors. Exit paths involve rebuilding offline networks, pursuing education, or pivoting to stable ventures. Success there highlights resilience born of reflection. Men's opt out isn't rejection of connection, but prioritization of peace. Re engagement demands aligned values, support, respect, shared effort. Some bridges rebuild on those terms, others remain unbuilt amid lingering resentments. Societal rebalance looms, cooperation historically sustains, division erodes, incentives shift toward realism, contribution, mutual uplift. As year end approaches, signals converge. Modest growth, stubborn costs, relational recalibrations, alternative systems rising. Winter arrives gradually, testing preparedness. Stories abound, struggling creators, withdrawn men, historical echoes, all urging alignment with enduring principles. Provision, protection, partnership thrive on reciprocity, not entitlement. Adaptation separates outcomes. Skills compound, networks fortify, mindsets determine trajectories. The great recalibration continues, revealing truths layer by layer. Platforms modernize ancient trades, but core laws, supply, demand, reciprocity, remain unchanged. Flooded markets depress values, withdrawn participants create rarities, resilient structures emerge from necessity. In this environment, wisdom lies in discernment, distinguishing quick relief from lasting security, transactional from transformational, isolation from strategic solitude. Men forging ahead focus on self mastery, asset protection, fraternal support, creating abundance that attracts naturally when conditions suit. Kevin Samuels' insights ring truer amid mounting evidence. Change inexorable. As society continues its gradual but unmistakable descent into greater economic instability and social fragmentation. In late 2025, the consequences for women become increasingly stark and unavoidable, painting a picture that few were prepared to confront just a decade ago. Women who spent years internalizing messages of inherent superiority, limitless options, and guaranteed safety nets now face a world where those assurances are evaporating faster than anyone anticipated. The comfortable assumptions that men would always pursue, provide, and protect regardless of circumstances, that professional credentials alone would secure prosperity. That independence meant never needing to compromise or compete, are colliding head on with a reality defined by scarcity, withdrawal, and recalibration. This collision isn't abstract, it's manifesting in everyday struggles that grow more visible by the month, from rising housing insecurity among single women to the quiet desperation driving more into unsustainable income streams. One of the most profound consequences is the accelerating loss of economic leverage that women once enjoyed in abundance era systems. For decades, female hypergamy was not only possible, but culturally encouraged. Seek partners with equal or greater resources, status, and stability, while societal structures subsidized independence through education preferences, workplace initiatives, and legal frameworks tilted toward female outcomes in family matters. But as the broader economy contracts, debt burdens mount, real wages stagnate, and job markets cool, those structural advantages begin to yield diminishing returns. Women find themselves competing in oversaturated professional fields where entry level positions demand more experience than ever, while mid career advancement stalls amid corporate belt tightening. Simultaneously, the pool of high earning, commitment oriented men shrinks as many redirect energy toward personal security and opt out of traditional provider roles. The result is a growing cohort of educated, professionally accomplished women facing financial precarity they never planned for, often living paycheck to paycheck despite degrees and resumes that once promised upward mobility. This economic squeeze hits hardest in the realm of housing and basic stability. Reports emerging in 2025 show disproportionate rises in vehicle dwelling, couch surfing, and hidden homelessness among women in their 30s and 40s, many of whom followed the prescribed path of career focus over early family formation, only to discover that rents and mortgages have outpaced even dual income potentials for many. Without the buffer of a committed partner or access to male dominated parallel networks, these women face isolation in their struggles, relying on strained public resources or personal credit that compounds vulnerability. The psychological impact compounds the practical. Pride, long nurtured by narratives of self sufficiency, makes seeking help feel like failure, delaying outreach until crises deepen. Stories circulate of former corporate professionals quietly moving back with aging parents or sharing cramped apartments with multiple roommates, a sharp reversal from the independent urban lifestyles celebrated just years earlier. As traditional paths narrow, the pull toward adult content creation intensifies, but the consequences here are particularly severe and long lasting for women entering or remaining in this space. Beyond the immediate low average earnings, still hovering around $150 to $180 monthly for most creators in late 2025, the deeper costs emerge over time. Permanent online exposure shapes future opportunities in ways many underestimated entry. Background checks for professional roles increasingly flag explicit content, dating prospects recoil at discoverability, and family relationships strain under revelations. Women who viewed the platform as temporary bridge income often find themselves trapped by algorithm dependence and subscriber expectations, escalating content to maintain visibility while boundaries erode. Burnout manifests not just financially but emotionally, with rising reports of anxiety, depression, and identity fragmentation among long term creators who feel reduced to their most transactional traits. The relational consequences cut even deeper as societal collapse accelerates male withdrawal. Women accustomed to passive selection, signaling interest, and waiting for pursuit now confront a landscape where quality men are increasingly scarce and selective. The stares across rooms, the subtle hints, the social media likes go unanswered, not out of obliviousness, but deliberate choice. Men, having internalized decades of messaging that approaching carries risks and rewards are skewed, simply decline participation. This leaves women competing in ways they were never socialized to do, initiating conversations, demonstrating value up front, offering genuine support and encouragement rather than checklists of demands. Many resist this shift, viewing it as regression or unfair burden, but resistance only prolongs isolation. Those who adapt, learning to approach directly, to build emotional safety, to prioritize partnership over independence theater, find doors opening, but they remain the minority in a culture still clinging to outdated scripts. Family formation suffers profoundly under these dynamics. Birth rates continue their decline into 2025, with women in prime childbearing years citing financial instability, partner scarcity, and fear of solo parenting as primary barriers. The consequence is a growing cohort delaying or foregoing motherhood entirely, often with quiet regret surfacing in later decades when biological windows close. Those who do become mothers without stable partnerships face heightened challenges. Childcare costs outpace inflation. Support networks fray under geographic mobility. And single mother households correlate strongly with poverty cycles. The societal narrative once promised that women could have it all: career, independence, family on their timeline. But collapsing economics expose the abundance era illusion, leaving many confronting irreversible choices made under false premises. Access to protection and provision becomes another critical consequence as formal systems strain and informal male networks solidify. In times of crisis, whether economic downturns, natural disruptions, or rising urban insecurity, women historically benefited from male willingness to prioritize female safety. But as trust erodes and incentives shift, that reflexive protection wanes. Women traveling alone, living in marginal neighborhoods, or facing emergencies increasingly report reliance on paid services or strained public resources rather than community or partner support. Parallel male economies, barter circles, skill trades, security cooperatives offer practical safety nets but remain largely inaccessible without established ties. The harsh reality dawns: without a man embedded in these networks or without contributing value to gain entry, women face heightened exposure to the very risks that abundance once buffered. Health consequences compound across physical, mental, and reproductive domains. Economic stress correlates with rising cortisol levels, sleep disruption, and chronic conditions among women navigating these shifts alone. Mental health resources stretch thin under demand surges, with wait times lengthening and costs rising. Reproductive health suffers as women delay care amid financial priorities or lack partner support for family planning. Stories emerge of women foregoing preventive screenings, managing conditions through over the counter remedies, or facing complications from delayed interventions, all while cultural messaging still frames independence as empowerment rather than potential vulnerability. The social status reversal hits pride hardest of all. Women elevated for 50 years as morally superior, more capable, inherently valuable, now confront a world measuring worth through tangible contribution and reciprocity. Professional achievements that once commanded respect yield diminishing social capital when basic provision falters. The consequence is cognitive dissonance on a massive scale. Maintaining narratives of empowerment while experiencing disempowerment, blaming external forces rather than examining cultural incentives that led here. This denial delays adaptation, prolonging suffering as reality asserts itself incrementally through rising bills, empty inboxes, and shrinking options. As digital restrictions expand, content moderation, financial deplatforming, surveillance tools, the consequences for women in alternative income streams grow dire. Creators already face sporadic account shutdowns, payment processor issues, and algorithm demotions in 2025, with trends pointing toward tighter controls ahead. Those reliant on such platforms find income streams vanishing overnight without recourse or unemployment buffers. Mainstream employment, already competitive, offers little refuge when explicit histories surface in vetting processes. The trap closes. Paths forward narrow, while past choices echo permanently. Community consequences ripple outward as female friendship networks strain under shared hardships. Bonds once strengthened by abundance era activities, brunches, travel, shopping, weakened by financial constraints and differing life paths. Women who adapted early by rebuilding relational skills sometimes distance themselves from those clinging to old narratives, creating fractures where solidarity once existed. Support circles shift toward practical skill sharing rather than emotional venting, mirroring male network evolution, but starting from further behind. The generational transfer of hardship emerges as one of the most tragic long term consequences. Mothers, who embraced independence first messaging, now watch daughters inherit a harsher landscape without the same buffers or illusions. Advice once given: prioritize career, delay family, maintain high standards, rings hollow amid current realities, creating intergenerational tension. Daughters navigate even fewer options, entering adulthood with greater debt burdens, fewer stable partners, and cultural confusion about feminine value beyond physical leverage. Spiritual and existential consequences complete the picture. Women raised to find meaning in achievement and autonomy confront voids where purpose once seemed guaranteed. The search for deeper significance, family, faith, community contribution, clashes with decades of messaging devaluing those paths. Some rediscover traditional roles through necessity, finding unexpected fulfillment in support and nurturing once dismissed as oppression. Others spiral into resentment, viewing societal collapse as cosmic injustice rather than predictable outcome of misaligned incentives. As winter deepens into 2026 projections, modest growth forecasts, persistent inflation, regulatory expansions, these consequences intensify for women slowest to adapt. Those recognizing reality early pivot towards skill building, direct relationship initiative, and practical preparation. They learn trades alongside men, contribute to networks, rebuild bridges through demonstrated value. Outcomes improve markedly there. Stable partnerships form. Access to parallel systems opens. Security compounds through cooperation. But for those resisting, clinging to entitlement, demanding return to old dynamics without reciprocity, the consequences grow existential. Isolation deepens, resources dwindle, regret accumulates. History offers no examples of sustained privilege amid collapse, only adaptation or decline. The greatest consequence may be the shattering of illusions that shaped modern femininity. Superiority narratives crumble under survival demands. Independence reveals limits without interdependence. Options prove finite when participation requires mutual effort, yet within consequence lies potential renewal. Hardship forces clarity. What truly sustains, what genuinely attracts, what enduringly matters. Women emerging through this crucible often develop resilience, wisdom, and groundedness absent in abundance eras. The path forward narrows but clarifies. Approach, support, contribute, align, reject passivity, embrace agency and competition, build rather than demand. Societal collapse doesn't discriminate, but preparation and adaptation determine survival quality. Women facing the sharpest consequences today hold power to reshape trajectories tomorrow through humility, effort, realism. The story continues writing itself daily in choices made or avoided. Consequences compound accordingly, shaping not just individual lives, but civilization's next chapter. As these realities settle in December 2025, the urgency grows palpable. Women awakening to consequences now position themselves for better outcomes ahead. Those delaying face steeper climbs later. Reality offers no extensions, only opportunities seized or missed. What did you think about everything we discussed here today? Do you see these patterns playing out around you? Do you agree with the analysis or do you have a different take? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read them all and love hearing from you. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video and just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.